everyone, what's going on? This is Cubs fan Han here to do another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video, and let me give a quick shout out to my friends at gaming-fans.com. Go ahead and check them out. They're also on Twitter at gamingfansdfn, and today we are talking about Commander Luke a bit more, and specifically what you need to do to get ready for Commander Luke and how we might be able to use him going forward. So obviously there's going to be a little bit of theory and a little bit of speculation in here, but I do want to kind of talk about this so we can get some things going and hopefully be as prepared as possible, because if you read over his kit like I did, he is going to shake up the meta a lot. And he definitely seems to be a direct counter to Rex, so something to really keep in mind is either how are you going to get Commander Luke or how are you going to counter him, and I think he's going to be very hard to counter, so I hope that you're working on getting him. And I know that this is controversial. I mean, look, I get it. We need to have 5 characters, some of which are very unused to this point. If you haven't been playing for a long time, and we have to have them at 7 stars. You have to have Farm Boy Luke, you have to have Old Ben. Those are probably the 2 that most people don't have, and then Stormtrooper Han, Leia, and R2, all at 7 stars, and this is the first character that is unlocking at 7 stars. There will be no such thing as a 6-star Luke or a 5-star Luke, etc. It's just going to be 7-star. And I get it, it's rough. It's a rough farm. I mean, me myself, if you take a look at my squad here, here's what I've got. I don't have my Luke Skywalker at 7 stars yet, or my Old Ben. When they announced this, I only had 5 shards for Old Ben, and I have been dumping every ounce of Cantina energy that I can into my Old Ben. I really hope he's going to be ready in time, but the kicker on that is going to be how much time do we have on this? When is it going to be over? They haven't quite announced when this event is going to start and when it's going to end. So, everyone, let's all hold hands and pray that this is going to last until the very end of August so we can have as much time as possible. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't have inside information on it, but I really hope that they give us as much time as possible. So, without any further ado, let me get into a few tips to help you get ready for Commander Luke. Tip number 1 is to focus on the minimum requirements first. So what I mean by that is, if you look at the characters needed, what are the minimum requirements? Stars. That's for you to even show up to the party, you need to have your stars in place. So if I'm going to start worrying right now about my gear for Princess Leia, for example, that's not important right now. What's important is that I get my Luke Skywalker and Old Ben to 7 stars. Now, a lot of you, I understand, these are probably the 2 characters that you don't have at 7 stars yet. So who do you prioritize? Because both, if you look here, Luke Skywalker is in Cantina 1B. He's an 8 energy Cantina node, and Old Ben also in Cantina 2F, an 8 energy node. So how do you decide which one to farm? So I would say is take a look at who is closer at this point. So for me, Luke Skywalker, I have 68 out of 100, and for Old Ben, I need a lot more. So I'm going to give priority to Old Ben. Something else to consider here is our daily login rewards are Luke Skywalker shards right now. So you're gaining some shards from there. And then also, if you go to your guild store, Luke Skywalker has the potential to show up in here. So make sure you are keeping a very close eye on your guild store, and I recommend you save your guild currency for him. Make sure you have at the very least 400 in there at all times if you can, so that you can pick up 5 Luke shards if you need him. Old Ben does not show up in here. So make sure that you focus on those minimum requirements first, because gear at this point is, while it's probably going to be important for the event, you need to be able to show up to the party first, so make sure you get those stars in order first. Now, a second tip here is to drop your energy refreshes. And there's very rare occasions where I would suggest this, but this regular energy here costs 50 crystals a day. It's very good to farm gear, etc. But right now, if you are panic farming Old Ben like I am, you need to use every ounce of crystals that you have on Old Ben shards, which is going to be Cantina refreshes. I've noticed that they have 3 refreshes at 100 crystals right now, and then it goes to, I think, 2 at 200, and then you go up to 400 crystal refreshes. If you can afford it, I would very much urge you to spend at least 3 Cantina refreshes a day, if at all possible, if you're finishing high enough. This is where it's going to benefit you a lot if you're finishing high in your arena, so that you have enough crystals to spend on that. That way you are dumping everything that you have. This is what I'm doing into old Ben. And then once you get him to 7 stars, any leftover you can give to Luke Skywalker. But hopefully you're able to manage him well enough in the guild store, and hopefully you farmed him enough already, because it was already something that they've urged us to do. And then of course also in the daily login rewards. Now, something else to keep an eye on is your shard shop. I have seen both old Ben and Luke Skywalker show up in the shard shop. It's only 2 shards, it's not much, but every ounce is needed. Now, I am assuming here most of us need Luke and old Ben, mostly old Ben. Old Ben is definitely the character that seems to have the most pain for people to get, and that's exactly the boat I'm in. But maybe you don't have Stormtrooper Han or Princess Leia. What sucks in that case is that both of them are going to come in your arena store. So you see Princess Leia there, and then Stormtrooper Han is down here. So that's another reason why you're really going to want to be careful to finish as high as possible in your arena, so that you can have as much currency as possible to get them. If you are finishing in the top, you're getting somewhere between 700 and 900 arena currency a day. This refreshes at, I don't know if the time zones are exactly the same, but for me at noon, and then at 6, and then at midnight. So what you really want to do is to pop in there as much as you can to get both Stormtrooper Han and Leia shards, if you don't have them at 7 stars yet. Now, the last character, of course, that you're going to need to worry about for stars is R2-D2. And this is going to be a bit tough. If you do not already have the Empire characters that you need to get R2-D2 to 7 stars, you might have to wait until the next round for this Luke event. And I'm sorry that could be the case. I feel for you, but it might be a reality. If you are close, then your first minimum requirement you're going to want to focus on is getting the Empire characters there to get R2-D2 up there. If R2-D2 isn't there, it doesn't matter if you have old Ben, because R2-D2 can't get you into the battle unless he is at 7 stars. You have to have him. So try to find the minimum requirements necessary to get your Empire team to get there. So that really covers, when you're looking at these characters, the first thing that you really need to make sure that you do is that you get all of them at 7 stars and find the quickest route possible without spending any resources elsewhere. I am using all of my crystals right now, all of them, for Cantina refreshes. I do not use anything else for crystals. I'm not buying energy refreshes. If I have to buy an arena refresh because I ran out of battles, that's one thing I will spend on, because I need to get more crystals so that I can spend energy on Cantina. But otherwise, everything is going to Cantina because I need old Ben and I need Farm Boy Luke. So another tip here is to save your gear. You still do need to use your energy here. I don't mean that you shouldn't use your energy. I'm just suggesting that you shouldn't necessarily refresh it, because you need those crystals for Cantina right now probably. But assuming you are able to get Commander Luke, that's awesome. But what are you going to do with him once you get him? I would recommend you use this time right now as an opportunity to farm his gear. Now, we don't know what his gear is yet, and once we do, we can get a little more specific with this. But for now, what I recommend you start farming are stun cuffs and stun guns, carbantes. Let's see here. Here's our stun guns. Here's our carbante. I would recommend that you request carbantes from your guild. That tends to be something that is able to yield good results. Stun cuffs, stun guns, and that kind of thing. Make sure you stock up on those gear pieces that everybody seems to need. The stun cuffs, the stun guns, the carbantes, the hollow projectors, the Mark III hollow projectors, those kind of things. We can be pretty confident going into this that Luke is probably going to need a lot of those. So make sure that you're hanging on to those and that you're not spending gear on these characters. So what probably is best is that you save your gear, just get the stars ready, and then use as much of that gear as you can on Commander Luke once you unlock him. instead of wasting it on these characters and over preparing, so to speak. Unless, of course, you have plans to use some of these characters with Luke Skywalker once he is unlocked, with Commander Luke, I should say. But we'll get into that here in a bit. Another thing you should really be focusing on is saving your Zeta abilities. How many Zetas do you have? I've actually been saving Zetas for a while, so I'm pretty stoked about this. I have 40 Zeta ability mats saved up. How many do you have saved up? I would recommend not spending, if you want to unlock Commander Luke, stop spending your Zetas. Hang on to them because he has 3 Zeta abilities, and he's not going to function nearly as good as he looks like he will on paper unless you have your Zeta abilities saved up. Alright, so another big part about preparing for Commander Luke, of course, is what team are you going to run him with? It does you no good to just unlock him and throw him into any random team. While it does kind of look like he's probably going to work in a lot of team compositions, I hope you're thinking ahead at where he is going to function the best. So let's take another look at his kit real quick. I've already broken this down for you, but I do want to take a look at which abilities are probably going to work well with other characters so that we can kind of get an idea of what characters we might want to pair with Commander Luke, so that once he is unlocked, we're going to be able to get the maximum benefit. But this is what I want to focus on, his leader ability, and I'm thinking most of you are probably going to benefit the most using Commander Luke with his leader ability. But Rebel Maneuvers says, Rebel allies have plus 50% counter chance, plus 50% defense, and plus 15% offense. Whenever an enemy resists a detrimental effect, Rebel allies gain 5% turn meter. So this is what I want to focus on when evaluating who we want to pair with Commander Luke. You don't necessarily have to put him with Rebels. I'm sure he will still work outside of that. But which Rebels are going to be the best to put him with? A lot of people initially, and myself included, were thinking, oh, well, Luke's just going to bring Chirrut and Baze back into the picture. But I don't really think that that's necessarily true. I think a lot of the reason why people thought Chirrut and Baze were going to be immediately paired with Commander Luke is just because they have the Rebel tag. But do they really play to Luke's synergies? And if you look at this, Luke is going to be benefited the most, and the teams are going to benefit the most from Rebels that debuff, from Rebels that apply detrimental effects. Because anytime those are resisted, and who's going to be resisting the most? Tenacity up characters like Rex, who is the current meta, so you're bound to be going against Rex teams, and those teams are going to resist a lot of these detrimental effects. So what I actually want to look at here is which Rebels debuff. Which Rebels are applying those detrimental effects that have an opportunity to be resisted, and those are the Rebels we want to start considering pairing with Commander Luke. And I've compiled a list here of every single Rebel in the game that can apply a debuff or a detrimental effect of some kind that could be resisted, because that is going to be the kind of thing that really helps you benefit from Luke's leader ability and gaining turn meter. So if you take a look here, Baze, right at the top of our list, Baze is going to be able to apply speed down, but just to target enemy. And something you'll see here is that Chirrut is not on the list. Chirrut is not able to apply any debuffs. And so this is where I feel like Chirrut and Baze actually might not be the best option for Commander Luke, because you're going to lose out on a lot of turn meter gain potential. Biston also has an opportunity to apply a dot, but that's only to target enemy. Bodhi is going to be able to apply evasion down on his basic and on his special, but on his special he does have an AoE chance. So that is something that is notable. Cassian is going to be one of the better options here. He does have an ability to afflict buff immunity on his basic, but his special ability is super cool. Take a look at this. Shock Grenade. Inflict ability block. Defense down, healing immunity, offense down, and speed down once each to random enemies for 2 turns. If the primary target is Empire, expose them for 2 turns. So you've got 6 possible debuffs there that you can apply, and that is on an AoE basis. So Cassian is going to be arguably one of the best characters to run with Commander Luke. Chopper, he is going to be able to stun. This isn't very valuable though, because it's just going to be to droid targets, and how many droids are you going against except for R2-D2? And he's Phoenix Squad, so I'm going to pass on him. Farm Boy Luke, he does have some good debuff chance. He's going to be able to apply a dot on his basic, and he's going to be able to stun and inflict defense and speed down Hera is going to be able to expose, which is one of the most powerful debuffs in the game. That can really help you deal some solid damage, but it's only to target enemy. HAAT Rebel Scout's going to be able to stun on his special, but it is just going to be target enemy. Same with HAAT Rebel Soldier, except for it is offense down, only to target enemy. Jhin is going to be able to stun on her special, but just to target enemy. Notably, she does have a chance to expose on her leader ability, but that is only through her leader ability, so it doesn't really benefit Luke in his leader setting, obviously. K2SO is able to inflict offense down, and on his special he is able to daze. Both are awesome to have, but neither are going to be AoE. Kanan is able to inflict offense down. That's not AoE. Lobot, whatever, Lobot. Old Ben is going to be awesome with Commander Luke, and I actually think Old Ben's going to be a character that you're going to see popping up in your arenas once Commander Luke is released and once his rework goes live. Old Ben is going to be able to deal evasion, or let's see here, evasion down on his basic, and then on his special, he is going to be able to also grant Rebel allies 3% turn meter for each effect resisted. That includes Jedi. So this is very similar to Luke's, but you're going to get 3%. So remember, Luke is granting 5% turn meter. Old Ben is doing the exact same thing, but 3% turn meter. So combine those, and now you're gaining 8% turn meter just for Old Ben being present. Pow is Pow. I mean, he's not that great of a character, but he does have an AoE debuff chance to inflict defense down to everyone. So there's that. R2-D2 is going to be awesome with Commander Luke. I mean, I think it was the devs that said R2-D2 and Commander Luke are a match made in heaven. R2, obviously, we know he has that stun chance on his basic, but he's also going to be able to burn, which can't be evaded, but it can be resisted. So there's a big difference there. That evasion means that they're going to be able to hit through foresight, but resisted is still very possible on the actual detrimental effect. So R2-D2 is going to be great with Commander Luke. Raid Han, we don't know his rework yet, and by the time you guys see this, that might be live, because I'm pretty sure it's coming out tomorrow. But whatever the case is, he's able to stun on his basic, but just on his first turn. So not necessarily the best, but I have a feeling that they might make him better in that respect. So pay attention to that. He could be viable. Sabine is actually not a bad choice. If you look at Sabine's ability here, she deals physical damage on her special to all enemies, expose and stagger target enemies for 2 turns. This attack can't be countered or evaded, but it could be resisted. So there's an AoE debuff that might be notable for you. If you're working on getting some others farmed, in the meantime, maybe she's not your first choice, but maybe you've got her ready. She might be good to throw in there with Commander Luke. Scarif Rebel Pathfinder. He's another one who has a AoE debuff chance. He's going to be able to deal physical damage to all enemies with a 70% chance to inflict offense down for 3 turns. This is good. And it also only has a 3-turn cooldown, which is notable. He's going to be able to do it quite frequently. So Scarif Rebel Pathfinder might be a good option. He's a pretty tanky tune. He's able to revive, etc. So he might be good. Wedge, he's pretty decent. I mean, obviously Wedge is a great character, but he's only going to be applying defense down to 1 target enemy. And then lastly, Zeb, who is able to apply daze, stun, and stagger through his kit, but all only to 1 target enemy. So there's actually a lot of rebels here that are able to apply debuffs, but the ones that I think are probably the most notable in considering which rebels you want to put with Commander Luke are the ones who are able to apply the AoE effect. So let's take a look at all of the AoE rebels who are able to apply debuffs on an AoE basis right next to each other. So we got Bodhi, Cassian, Old Ben, Pow, R2-D2, Sabine, and Scarif Rebel Pathfinder. Who are the best characters to use in here? Bodhi, I'm only going to give him a 3 out of 10. He's not a very strong character. He does have that AoE chance, but maybe not the best. Cassian is actually somebody I think you guys really need to consider here. Obviously, he's not a meta character by any means, but he has a really strong AoE here that is going to benefit Luke's leader ability. And he's also a pretty decent hitting tune. His DPS is pretty good. Maybe a downside to him is you're not going to be using him with K2SO in this set, but he doesn't necessarily have to have K2SO to be effective. So I would give a pretty good look at Cassian. He could work pretty well in this. Old Ben, I think, is going to be ran with Commander Luke frequently. He's got a very solid AoE debuff that he can apply on that ability block, and he also boosts that turn meter gain. So you're going to get 3% more benefit on that turn meter gain when you run Old Ben with Commander Luke. POW is POW. Forget POW. R2-D2 is awesome, and I think he is going to work very well with Commander Luke, and so I hope you guys have R2-D2. I would definitely throw him in there. Sabine is pretty good, but I don't feel like she's viable enough to really throw in there. Maybe you guys could experiment with her and prove me wrong. I'm going to score her a 5 out of 10 on that. And then lastly, Scarif Rebel Pathfinder is also able to apply an AoE debuff, and I'm going to score him a 6 out of 10. He's actually pretty solid, and I think a lot of people are going to experiment with him. He's tanky, he can revive, he has some good functionality. He's not going to be great, and I think that people will probably find a better use for higher DPS characters to put in there instead. But if they're able to find good use for him, he will definitely benefit you with his AoE debuff and his tankiness and his ability to taunt as well. Alright, so in summary, in looking at all of these kits here, and in looking at Commander Luke's kit and kind of looking ahead at what could be coming, what are we probably going to see, and what team composition should you be working on to be ahead of the curve here so that you can put Commander Luke in and benefit from him the most right away? I really think that Commander Luke with Old Ben and R2-D2 is going to be a must. Those three seem to have some really powerful synergy out the gate, and I'm really anxious to see how they work together. Who are those last two characters going to be? And I think that this could really range from a wide array of different things. I could see a lot of people experimenting with Cassian and maybe Scarif Rebel Pathfinder in there. I don't think that combination is necessarily going to be very viable at the top, even though both Cassian and Scarif Rebel Pathfinder have that AoE chance to give a lot of turn meter to the team. They're not necessarily going to hit very hard, so you might lose out on too much DPS by putting them in there, but I do think that people will try them out. So maybe team option number 1, which is a full AoE debuff Rebel team, is going to be Commander Luke with Old Ben, R2-D2, Scarif Rebel Pathfinder, and Cassian. But what I think is more likely is that we will see Commander Luke, Old Ben, R2-D2, and then 2 extra characters that don't necessarily have that. 2 of the most obvious characters that I could really see happening just because of how OP they are General Kenobi and Thrawn. I could easily see those characters being thrown into this squad. Who else? I could see maybe Leia and Raid Han. Now this is kind of dependent on how good is Raid Han's rework going to be. If his rework is really good, and I think he deserves a good rework because he's the first Raid character that we ever had. I mean, compare him next to General Kenobi, it's really not a contest. So let's theorize here that Raid Han gets a really sweet rework. Leia's rework is already really good. We would have the OG Rebel set. How sweet would that be? That is what I am really hoping for. Even though I don't have my Raid Han ready, I've never really used him much, even though he's sitting at 7 stars. That would be so cool. The Star Wars kid in me would just love to see that original team being the new meta. So that could happen. Maybe people will run Chase with them too. I personally think that Chase won't work the best with this team, but they are still such a powerful combination, and they do have that Rebel synergy that we could still see Chase thrown in there. So there's a couple options of what we could be seeing with Commander Luke. So at any rate, how do you feel about Commander Luke coming? I know there's a lot of negative feelings here, and the character requirements are stiff. But whatever the case is, if you are able to get him, are you super excited? I know I sure am. I hope I'm able to get him. It's going to be close for me. But I do think he's going to be worth it. And keep in mind, if you aren't able to get him this time, something to just remember is that he will be back. I doubt that we are only going to have one crack at Commander Luke ever. So if you don't get him the first time around, I'm sure you'll have a chance down the line. But whatever the case is, I hope you liked the video. If you did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And don't ever forget